raising your consciousness through equality. That's what I meant to say in my last video before I cut it out. But through equality, realizing and realization that we are all one. That's what I meant to say. Because the vegan topics is no different than religion when they pull on your heartstring. That's team green, team red. You know, you got red meat. That's the law of correspondence. We could start to say this with, you know, if I eat a lemon, it caters to my solar plexus, or if a walnut looks like a walnut because it looks like a brain, it's good for my brain. So these things are, of course, you use your imagination and you're redefining the meaning of everything in your life, and it's gonna benefit you based on the belief and the perception and the energy you put to it. You get what I'm saying? Now, that's all I wanted to cover for that video. In this video, I'm gonna talk about what I spoke of briefly, and I didn't really go too deep into it, which is basically us inhabiting other planets. See, the whole thing is that they make you think that you're going to be able to leave this world that you're in, Earth, with their technology, when in actuality you can't leave this planet the way that they're telling you that you could leave with their technology. You become dependent on them. This world is, you would get out of this planet or this Earth, because this Earth is you, right? It's a reflection. You're projecting this reality. So the same way you can't get out of body physically is the same way you can't get out of this world physically. You would have to get out with the same techniques that you would have to use as if when you're coming out of body, or even astral projecting, or when you're just thinking about something in the past or something in the future. You're coming in and out of realities the same way, right? Your brain waves, there's frequencies and vibration. You could vibrate yourself out of this reality if you vibrate high enough. You get what I'm saying? Not to say that you won't be in time. Your energy signature's still here. The same way, even if somebody dies, their physical body's gone, but there's a way for your physical body to vibrate out of this reality too. But notice how even just when you come out of body, before you get that sleep paralysis, you go through this crazy vibrational state where you're vibrating real hard, and then you're able to slide out of your body. But when people are aware and they go through the sleep paralysis, they try to move, and you really not supposed to try to, you know, physically move. You imagine or feel yourself coming out of body, and you just slide out like butter, because that's how I got out of my out of body. Now, here's the thing though, when it comes down to you know, the other planets and whatnot, the whole thing is that all the planets that you know of, right? And this is what I briefly covered in the other video. You only know up to, like, let's say Pluto, right? But the technology won't make you go that far down. You would start to wonder why you only have a certain amount of power here, right? Because you like, when you follow astrology, you're only following a certain distance of planets, right? But they're making you think like it's far out and you'll never be able to get there because it's billions of light years away. When in actuality, like I just said, every planet has a frequency, right? So when you, there's the whole thing, you can meditate to these frequencies, but the key is to try to meditate with them without having headphones on. See, because you want to try to do things with as less dependency to things outside of you. Like, there's people who can't meditate unless they have complete silence and they're listening to binaural beats, or there's no interruptions. When a true, you know, master would be able to do this in the middle of chaos. Like, when you look at the eye of the hurricane, you're going to be basically at the calmest state, but regardless of the chaos happening around, because you're so centered in your space, you can actually meditate in the middle of the chaos, right? So if you can't meditate because there's too much going on outside of you, then that means that you're just easily distracted. That's what that means. Your attention is not really centered, but it's focused still on the things outside of you, because if it was truly focused internally, then the chaos outside wouldn't be bothering you. Right? So you can observe all the chaos. The calmest point is the eye of the storm. This is why to be centered is basically being as peaceful as possible, and you're disconnected from reality in that sense. That's kind of like how when you meditate, you can use this imagination to envision yourself in the middle of a hurricane. Like, you are the eye of that storm. And that's the easiest way to try to, you know, meditate, where everything starts to swirl and turn around you. But this is how you also know you're the center of the universe. Like, everything revolves around you, right? And we even look at our solar system and how these planets revolve around a certain star. And you imagine yourself doing it, but you're the one that everything is revolving around. But here's the thing though. There's more planets outside of the distance that you are told we're in right now. You get what I'm saying? So this is why I'm saying, like, if once you get to know the planets that you're in now, right? By frequencies, I mean getting to know the tunes and frequencies, right? The same way you know music and songs here. All songs have a hook, right? All the songs have a hook. And that's why the songs stay in your head and you're like, man, I can't get this song out of my head. But they're playing under a distorted frequency, but they're also playing with something that, you know, they're words. And words have programming abilities because you form mental pictures with them. So you go into a hypnotic state whenever you're speaking. Either way, this is where the worldwide hypnosis is basically at its highest peak, is due to language, you know? That's why they say words, you spell words, right? Whenever you go to school, they make you pronounce these words exactly how they're supposed to be pronounced, right? If not, you don't pass the class. So check this out. One thing that's very important is getting to know these frequencies in its purest form, being very focused, and disconnect from all the music and that you know of, and just listen to these frequencies. Let's say you want to connect with Mars, because I've done this. Now, Mars gets me also into a warlike mentality. But again, there's always two sides of the same coin, like I was just telling you, right? 72 chakras in your brain. You got the Shem operation of the angels, and then you got the 72 conspirators of Set, we call the Goetic demons. So it's two sides of the same coin though, right? It's just where are you basically falling into as far as on a frequency level, because Mars gets me into a warlike mentality. I've noticed that, but it also gets me into a state where I'm more structured and focused and more stronger to be, because again, what, you know, when we look at the root chakra is red, but if your roots are strong, it's like a tree. You got a strong foundation. The tree is not easily toppled over, right? And if it does experience chaotic moments, then the roots will anchor themselves more into the ground, which in a human form, we say I'm more grounded, right? You're more grounded as an individual. So let's say, for example, if I'm feeding certain things within me, I could be feeding my ego, or I could be feeding the spiritual aspect of myself, which is basically coming down to where is my stability coming from? Where am I grounded in? Humanity, or am I grounded in a godly state before I go out and project anything out into the world? So now, when I look at, for example, I made this example in the previous video, and this is where I was going at with where I left off. You raise your consciousness, which is an energy, but your energy gets leaked out when you're projecting it into things that are just more human shit. That's how your spiritual strength starts to grow, is when you start to focus on yourself. So if I'm eating, let's say we go into the future, and to the point that we're at now, we're more into the future than what we would consider something that was more primitive, like slavery. It used to be a physical slavery, bro. The reason we once existed as physical slavery, and that's the idea that you're fed, is because of the mental slavery you're in now, right? And the reason I'm going to make these examples that are going to correlate with each other. We think that when we eat meat, that the meat is creating a disease, and it's not. Your inflammatory attitude toward your reality outside of you, that you basically doing it through consent, because you're making the choice through free will to engage in something outside of you and leak out all your energy by lashing out at somebody, potentially even, aside from giving up your energy, you giving up your freedom, right? So again, your life is a perception and projections. Our body's made of trillions of cells. The cells could be batteries, or they could be jail cells. And that's what your experience will be, determining on the choices and decisions we've made in our life with free will. But it takes a realization and a self-actualization and awareness for you to make the choices that are going to benefit you based on free will. You may think like somebody telling you, man, leave that person alone. Don't tell me what to do. I'll do whatever the fuck I want. And then you go and lash out at that person. What are you telling that person? That you have the free will to do whatever you want, and if you want to lash out at that person, you could. And it is a free will choice, right? But everything comes with consequences. So when they say do what thou wilt, it's not that it's a free-for-all for everybody. You still have to be conducive in this world to society, because everything outside of you is you. And aside from that, you can actually experience this through the human body. When you get fucking sick, that's when something chaotic happened in the body, and the body has an immune response to trap a pathogen that's not conducive to the body. So it's going to process it by either, it's going to trap it. That's where you get lymph nodes trapping, you know. That's why before you get sick, you notice how your lymph nodes swell up in your neck or in your groin area or whatnot. When you have infections or certain things, there's certain pathogens, your body will create an immune response by trapping it and creating a lymph node gets swollen, trapping that bacteria, processing it for it to actually eliminate it through waste, through breathing. So whenever you have tumors or lymph nodes, things swelling up, the best thing to do is start practicing deep breathing and breathing exercises. This is how you can combat any disease. You know what I'm saying? Even if you're overweight and you want to lose fat, breathe properly, right? Breathing could energize you, but it can also drain you out. Why? Because you're oxidizing and exercising certain things that don't belong within you, like an exorcism, right? That's why when you exercise, you deep breathe harder, because you're forcing you, so you're creating lactic acid, so your body is trying to alkalize. That's why when you take deep breaths, you oxygenate your cells. On a day-to-day basis, inflammatory thoughts, inflammatory foods, inflammatory actions create acids in the body. That's why they say stress kills you, because you are holding onto an emotion for you to actually feel like that, right? So that's why you want to focus on your breath. Breath is everything, right? So very importantly here to know is that the reason I say mental slavery right now is what caused physical slavery in the past. See, we're thinking of things linear when we should think about the multidimensional. So the more we go into the future, the further we're getting disconnected from God. So like I made the example of the physical slavery and the mental slavery, right? We were physical slaves because we're mental slaves now. It's no different than somebody saying the meat is causing the disease. The meat doesn't cause the disease. You are acting inflammatory, and you eating the meat with that is also causing a recipe for disaster, because the meat is a chemistry that can potentially cause stagnation in the body, right? So the fact that you're inflammatory in your reality outside of you, now this outside reality, which is a projection of you, you are now manifesting a disease within you, which is basically stagnation. That's what diseases are, stagnation, right? And when you are able to overcome certain things, right, then you become stronger. Your body builds a memory to it. So that's why it's not the meat that's the problem. It's humanity that's the problem. With veganism, though, they're looking at it from a religious standpoint, pulling on your heartstrings. This is Team Green. This is the inverted way of doing it. You may want to stop eating animals because you had a realization that these animals and everything outside of you is actually you. These are your brothers and sisters. You wouldn't hurt your brothers and sisters, right? But then it's not rooted out of the concept of morality, right? It's just rooted out of the fact that, you know, you're at a certain mental state now where people could do magic just mentally performing the rituals, or people would have to physically perform rituals, right? So you go through points where things are either physically done, or you get to a point where you can just mentally do these things, right? So if you're eating foods and you have knowledge that the food is bad for you, it can hurt you more just because you have knowledge of it, right? But if you're neutral, then it's just a potential. Depending on if you're inflammatory outside of you or not, or, you know, just depending on lifestyle choices, the things that you do in your life determine what this chemistry can do for you. Now, we can look at this from a viral standpoint, bacterial and viral infections, and how these viruses help with the evolution of your species, right? But the thing is, we're also doing it in an inorganic way, because these vaccines are the virus, except you're putting it into your system. That's the alien invasion. Because think about this, though. These viruses come from stars far, far away, right? So they come from galaxies far, far away, like the Betelgeuse star. And if you watch the isosthesis, I'm going to put the link of that video in the description of this video to refresh your memory on what it is that I'm talking about now. They're basically upgrading your junk DNA. What is junk DNA? This is the ability, if you turn it on, is no different than you turning on the lights in your house, that now all your appliances start to work in your body, right? To full capacity. On many different levels, though, right? Because you can have, let's say, let's say, for example, if your nervous system is shot, your body may appear to have a insulin resistance where it appears that your pancreas is not working, but it's not to say that your pancreas wasn't working. You may just have a nervous system issue in the pancreas due to neurotoxins you were taking that appears for you to have diabetes, but you really don't have diabetes. It was just a neurological issue. Things that could be addressed by addressing the nervous system. So instead, what they do is give you insulin or medications, right, to basically just address the symptom and not the root cause of the issue. That's just a big example right there. So you see how we're all fucked up in the game when we're not really paying attention to these things because we're too busy paying attention to the external world. We're not paying attention to what matters, and what matters is you. You know what I'm saying? So how do you know that when you die, you just cease to exist because you didn't put any attention to yourself? So what you go back to is what you made more real to you, is your external world. Is why people start to reincarnate and keep coming back into this shit, right? Because you paid more attention to this illusion that's set up a certain way for you to externalize your power, rather than you going within and creating your own world and universe, because that's what you do. You're a god, you're a creator, you create worlds. You create worlds too by eating worlds too. That's the crazy thing. What do? You eat information. You could be feeding your spirit, or you could be feeding your ego. If you're feeding your ego, this is where you come back into this bitch. If you feed your spirit, right, you're eating worlds, but you're eating ideas, but it's not to eat it and then regurgitate it. It's to literally process this shit. Like I made the example in my previous video. You figure it out. You make a form out of it. You creating worlds out of it. It's like you bringing, you go into another planet, you want to bring back, space material. You may bring back moon rocks, examine it in the laboratory. And then what happens? Now you have something to work with as far as like you gained intel or information on that planet. You could do this literally through frequencies. You inhabit the planets that you're aware of in your external world because they're aspects of you. But if you never attempt to connect with them on a frequency level, then this is how could you get to know yourself when these planets are actually co-governing your chakras, which co-govern your organs, that are basically responsible for organizations and structure, being religious. Your body's your temple and your church. So going to church is not going to church and praying to God. Going to church is going to a dark ass room and spending time with yourself. And this is basically a form of self-deification, self-actualization. So I think I explained this pretty in detail, but we make religion veganism. We make religion carnivorism. We make religion spirituality. We make religion non-duality. I mean, these are all beautiful things to engage with, right? But don't get married to it. You notice how a person can propose? Everything is proposing something to you. Proponer, right? And then when you get engaged, that's comprometer, right? And then when you marry somebody, that's casarse con alguien. Casarse con la idea. Getting married to the philosophy or the idea. So things are proposed to you. You can engage, but the whole thing is be balanced, because everything is fighting for your participation, for your attention. And when they fight for your attention, right? With your attention, what they're gaining from you is the interest. It's kind of like when people say, I'm paying money, or you pay with interest. That's how you get taxed. You know how people say, oh man, that shit got taxed. That's something that's exhausted, worn out. And that's your spirituality that I was just telling you that you're leaking out. You are the spirituality. Everything is spiritual. You know? Like even people talking about non-duality, let's say. Non-duality has a problem with spirituality. But from the non-dualistic standpoint, you got to see that everything that's outside to them is spiritual. Just like in spirituality, you have the realization of non-duality. Because once you start separating shit, you create duality. And nothing wrong with that, because this is what you're experiencing. That's how you experience yourself. But anyway, if you like this video, like it, and we will talk soon.